Your emergency fund is costing you thousands of dollars every single year, and nobody wants to tell you this because it sounds reckless. But the math is brutal, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. That 6-month cushion you've been building, it's quietly destroying your financial future while everyone applauds you for being responsible. Let's start with something uncomfortable. Consumer prices are 26% higher than they were in December 2019, 26%. That household that needed $9,000 to cover 3 months of expenses back in 2020 now needs closer to $11,500 just to maintain the same safety net. But here's the problem. If their savings balance stayed exactly the same, they didn't actually keep their emergency fund. They lost purchasing power without touching a single dollar. This is where it gets psychologically weird. You're watching your account balance stay perfectly still while your actual financial security erodes beneath you like sand washing away under your feet. Your brain sees the number and feels safe, but the number is lying. Even with high-yield savings accounts offering around 4% right now, which sounds decent, inflation's running at about 2.7% annually. You're barely staying ahead, and that's if you manage to find one of the better accounts. Most people are sitting in traditional savings accounts earning 0.38%, less than 0.5%. They're losing ground every single month and calling it financial responsibility. But inflation is just the surface problem. The real damage happens in a place most people never look: opportunity cost. Every dollar sitting in your emergency fund is a dollar that could be working significantly harder somewhere else, and the gap is massive. Research shows that maintaining a 6-month cash emergency fund instead of having 80% allocated to equities and 20% to treasuries creates a nearly 23% reduction in retirement wealth. 23% less money when you stop working. That's not a rounding error. That's the difference between comfortable retirement and working until you're 75. Here's the math that should genuinely bother you. If you invest $10,000 per year, earning just 2% in a savings account, after 30 years, you'll have $431,000. Not terrible. But if that same $10,000 per year averaged 10% annually in the stock market, you'd have nearly $2 million. $1.98 million versus $431,000. Same effort, completely different life. The traditional advice assumes you need this massive pile of cash sitting perfectly still, ready for disaster. But when was the last time you needed your entire emergency fund on a single day? Probably never. Most emergencies cost around $2,000 according to a Pew study. Car repairs, medical bills, unexpected travel. These aren't 6-month unemployment disasters. They're inconvenient speed bumps. So you've got the situation where you're holding 12 months of expenses in cash, watching it lose value to inflation, missing out on decades of compound growth, all to prepare for a scenario that statistically probably won't happen the way you're imagining it. The worst part, you're getting praised for this. Everyone tells you that having a big emergency fund means you're financially mature and responsible. Meanwhile, the actual financially successful people are doing something completely different. And they're not talking about it because it sounds irresponsible to suggest anything other than the standard advice. What they've figured out is that emergency funds function like insurance. And just like insurance, you want the minimum effective coverage, not maximum possible coverage. Because every dollar you over-insure is a dollar that can't build actual wealth. The question isn't whether you need some cash reserves. You absolutely do. The question is how much, and whether the traditional guidance still makes sense in an economy that's fundamentally different from the one that created those rules in the first place. Traditional financial planning was built for a world that doesn't exist anymore. Stable jobs, predictable income, pensions that actually materialized. That framework assumed you'd work at the same company for 30 years, retire with a gold watch, and live off guaranteed income. Today's economy runs on performance-linked pay, job transitions every few years, and industry disruptions that can vaporize entire career paths overnight. Freelancers, consultants, people working in startups or cyclical industries, they're told to maintain 9 to 12 months of expenses in cash. That's potentially $50,000 or more sitting in an account earning essentially nothing while their actual financial security crumbles. The smarter approach requires rethinking what emergency funds actually do. They're insurance against uncertainty, and like any insurance, you want adequate coverage without over-insuring. A middle ground strategy splits the difference. 3 months of expenses stays liquid in a high-yield savings account for immediate access. The other 3 months goes into a diversified investment account where it can actually grow. This gives you instant cash for genuine emergencies, while letting half your safety net work harder than inflation can erode it. Most emergencies don't require your entire fund immediately anyway. 60% of Americans experienced a financial shock last year, but the median cost was $2,000. Car repairs, medical bills, urgent travel. These aren't catastrophic events requiring 6 figures of instant liquidity. They're manageable problems that a reasonable cash buffer handles easily. If you've built substantial wealth already, the entire emergency fund concept starts looking absurd. Someone with an investment portfolio worth 20 times their annual expenses, a paid-off home, and multiple income streams doesn't need a massive cash pile gathering dust. They can self-insure. A home equity line provides backup liquidity. Their portfolio can cover genuine disasters. Maintaining 12 months of cash expenses at that point isn't prudence. It's just expensive paranoia. Signs you're over-insured, sitting on more than 12 months of expenses in cash while delaying retirement contributions. Watching inflation devour your purchasing power because you're scared of market volatility. Having no major risks on the horizon, but keeping enough cash to survive nuclear winter. That's not financial responsibility. That's letting fear override mathematics. Consider what happens when a 32-year-old chooses different cash cushions. With a $100,000 emergency fund, she needs to save $2,000 monthly to sustain a $100,000 annual lifestyle in retirement. Drop that cash cushion to $20,000. And she only needs $1,500 monthly. Same lifestyle, $500 more working for her future every single month. Over decades, that compounds into genuine wealth instead of stagnant safety theater. The current guidance has evolved because reality shifted. 4 to 9 months of essential expenses make sense for most people now, with the exact number depending on actual job stability and life circumstances. Not outdated rules from an economy that vanished 20 years ago. What the financially successful understand is that emergency funds serve a purpose, but that purpose has limits. You need enough to handle realistic problems without destroying your sleep quality. Anything beyond that threshold is just opportunity cost wearing a responsibility costume. The goal isn't maximum possible protection, it's optimal protection that doesn't sabotage everything else you're trying to build. Most people have this backwards, and it's costing them retirement years they'll never get back. Your emergency fund should protect your present without murdering your future. Anything else is just expensive peace of mind you can't actually afford. The traditional emergency fund advice isn't completely wrong. It's just incomplete for the world we're actually living in. You need cash reserves, absolutely. But the amount matters more than most people realize, and the cost of getting it wrong compounds silently for decades. 3 to 4 months of genuine expenses in a high-yield account handles almost every realistic scenario without destroying your long-term wealth building. Anything beyond that starts working against you instead of for you. The people who figure this out early don't just retire comfortably. They retire years earlier with significantly more freedom. The ones who follow outdated guidance work longer, stress more, and wonder why their diligent saving never translated into actual wealth. Your emergency fund exists to protect you from short-term chaos, not to become a monument to anxiety that costs you your future. Get the balance right and everything else becomes easier. Get it wrong, and you'll spend decades being responsible in ways that keep you poor.